I work with some college students, but this is something you run into probably a lot more. Some students go on academic probation in college. So can you explain what that is for people who don't know what academic probation is, and then talk about how do you even address that with a student? How do you start talking about that with a student and make a plan to get them back on track?
Yeah, it can be a very stressful thing for students because you never go to college expecting to struggle so bad. I think everything about college is very exciting. Yes, you can be nervous about some of the classes you're taking, but you never expect being on probation or even on like bad standing with the university. So each college has their own parameters for it, but it's basically if you maintain a GPA above, usually it's a 2.0, you're in good standing. If it's below a 2.0, that's when some flags start to get raised, and there's different tiers of probation. Sometimes there's like academic warning, and then you go on probation if you don't raise your GPA to over a 2.0 in a semester. And then, you can be on bad standing and you can lose your spot in your university. So it's a big deal. And when we work with students who are on academic probation, first we have to understand how they got there. Like, are you an engineering student taking all upper divisions as a sophomore? Or are you struggling with those organizational things like knowing how to study? Those are typically the students that we see, the ones that are very scattered, very smart. They can do the work, but just can't organize their assignments. They can't turn things in on time, or they just lack motivation. So when we work with them, we try to focus on the routines and we try to focus on making systems that are going to work best for them. So they don't have to rely on that motivation. They can just have that discipline to keep going. We talk about this all the time, where routines help us take away the decisions that we make throughout the day, so it becomes autopilot. That's something that we try to teach our students, and then helping with the accountability to making sure that they're showing up, making sure that they're trying their best to implement these new strategies is how their mentor can support them. Usually they have to be retaking the classes. So there's a lot of self-reflection that goes on of like, okay, this is exam 1. What did you do during exam 1 last semester? What didn't work? What did work? Usually it's more things that didn't work, and how to find new things that will help the student retain the information better, will help the student just start studying early or get them into office hours because they might know the professor already. It's a lot of self-reflection and truly understanding like, okay, what went wrong and what choices can I make to fix it?
Yeah, there's 2 things that you said that I think are really important. One of them is that one bad semester or one bad class isn't everything, right? Like, you're not automatically failing out of college if you have a bad semester, right? Mm-hmm. That being said, you might have some things to do to get back on track, but it's really important to find ways to motivate your student to move past some failures and learn from their failures so they can be successful in the future. One of my college students is going to have to retake one of her classes. And so we've been talking a lot, like you've said, about self-reflection of just why was she in that circumstance in the first place? Some of it's timing of like when to retake the class given the rest of her class load. Just really being strategic and trying to not put them in a position where they just have to like buckle down and work harder and force their way through it, because that's not really realistic and it's not good for their mentality either. So really just trying to build up their mentality and make them feel like once they go back to retake that class or try and raise their GPA, that they're in a really good spot and they're feeling really confident so that they can do really well.
Yeah. And another part of being on academic probation is meeting with somebody on campus. So using your resources too, because you bring up a really good point. Like, sometimes you fail a class, but then you can't take it until the next fall. But that's a prerequisite for another class, and your whole graduation plan can get altered. So yes, it's not the end of the world if you fail one class, but there are a lot of things that need to fall into place to make sure you're still graduating on time. And it's definitely doable, but you have to be talking to your advisor. You have to be working with the university to make it happen.
Yeah, on top of reflection and looking back, you really have to make a solid plan for the future. You're not just taking like a class because it satisfies something on your degree audit. You're like really thinking about not just a semester out, but a year out, a few years out, to try and figure out a plan to get through and graduate. Your students present differently than mine do. When you have a student show up and they're not engaged in the session, how do you get them back on track? How do you get them to feel excited or just like okay with being there?
Yeah, so it's similar to your approach as trying to just figure out like, why are you feeling down today? Yeah, naming that it's okay and it happens, but kind of getting behind like, okay, you're really low energy, not giving me a lot of answers when I ask you questions. So are you tired? Have you eaten today? Are you sick? All of my college kids get sick like twice a semester. So trying to get down to the root cause, I think, is definitely step one. I'm lucky that my college students feel comfortable sharing that with me. How we typically start addressing it is I never go straight to academics or their responsibilities or like the stuff that they're anxious about. I always want to bring it back to basic needs. So for college students, when they're completely in control of their own schedules, like, are you getting enough sleep, or are you staying up binging your TV show? Are you getting exercise? Are you over exercising? Because I had a student who wanted to train for a marathon, but that's a lot to do mid-semester, and she was just physically exhausted. So we talked through that, like finding a balance of being able to train and reach that goal, but also to make sure your energy just isn't depleted. We talk about eating well, like when they're gonna stock up on groceries, because sometimes my students just won't eat all day because they haven't had time to go to the grocery store. So especially in college, those routines become very important, because when you're experiencing burnout, the first thing to do is go back to your basic needs and take care of yourself, fill up your cup. I always tell students you can't pour from an empty cup. So what are you doing to fill up your cup that week? Whether it's your basic needs, social experiences, taking time for yourself, self-care, any of those things that can help them re-energize themselves.
Yeah, probably what a lot of parents are concerned about is my student only does quote unquote the bare minimum, right? They're doing their homework, but they don't have like personal hobbies, or they're not like pursuing some outside goal. Coming back to basic needs can be helpful for that as well before you can push them beyond to keep adding things into their life. But it's also really important for those students that are maybe doing a little bit too much. They've maybe put expectations on themselves that don't need to be there, or they just are really ambitious and they have these amazing goals and we want to help them get there, but they need to feel comfortable taking a step back when it's time and finding balance and revisiting their priorities in life.
So when you have a student and they don't have a lot of assignments to be working on, especially for your younger students who don't always have homework, how do you structure a session with them?
Yeah, there's always something that we could be working on. One of the things, we focus on this at Untapped, but I personally feel very strong about trying to develop executive function skills outside of the classroom for my students. A lot of the time for anxiety, developing those executive function skills means they're able to talk to their friends, talk to their peers, make plans with their friends, follow through, be able to talk to their teachers when they're feeling uncomfortable, or talk to their parents when they're feeling uncomfortable. Those skills that aren't like just how do you get started on homework, how do you turn in homework, a lot of times they have that mostly covered. When they're in this super structured environment of school, they're fantastic. And then when they're in less structured environments outside of school, they struggle in different ways, which is something that I can relate to personally, and probably why I feel so strongly about making sure that they develop that. But maybe they can get a personal hobby. Maybe they can invite their friend to go to like a new type of workout class with them. There's always things that you can encourage them to do or push them to do to build their confidence and to build these skills outside of school.
That's what I love about Untapped is we're not just all academics. Like, we truly care about the student as a whole, and we want them to thrive in all areas of their life. So when we have time to like not talk about school, I think that's where a lot of the relationship building happens, because you get to hear way more about their interests. And usually our students have interests and they can hyper focus on them, and it's incredible to see like what they can do with their hobbies and how much they know about certain things that I just have no clue about. So I think that's super great to empower them to tap into those skills and those interests. With my college students, we talk about like clubs or extracurriculars that they can do on campus, but sometimes we also talk about jobs. Like, okay, it's November, what are you doing this summer? And like having them start that conversation, because that process can take a really long time. If you're trying to find a summer job in May, you're probably just finding like a retail job or a restaurant job. But like if you actually want an internship that goes towards your field of study and what you want to do post-grad, or what you might want to do post-grad, you don't have to have it figured out all the time, but those processes are happening now. So I've been helping one of my students with her resume and with her supplemental pieces on this one application, because that's stuff that is stressful enough already for these young adults. And then when they have classes and assignments on top of that, it just gets jumbled and pushed down the priority list. So I like to shed some light on those types of things in our sessions.